everybody to this new way of doing things, at least for our committee. Maybe you've been doing it all along. Um, this is the October 15th, 2020 meeting of the Comprehensive Plans Steering Committee. I see at this point 14, 13, let's see, 12, 13 of our 16 members. So I don't see any members of the planning board. And also Abby McCabe is here, the town planner. This meeting's being filmed by the Westwood Media Center, and it's available on Comcast Channel 12 and Verizon Channel 42, and also on Westwood Media's YouTube channel. I don't see any members of the public. Would they show up, Abby, as well?
Yes, well, they'll be in the attendance, so you won't be able to see them on video, but I'll keep an eye on it if anyone comes in.
Okay, and let us know. As indicated in the agenda, the main purpose of the meeting tonight is for the committee to review the final drafts of the comprehensive plan and go over a proposed timeline for our next steps. Abby reminded me to remind you that you can mute yourself and unmute yourself. And so if there's background noise, or if you just choose to mute yourself, go ahead and do that. Make sure you turn yourself on though when you want to let us know your thoughts on something. Since there has been a bit of time, and assuming some members of the public will watch this, let me just do a very brief recap of where we've been. We started on November 19th of 2018, so just almost 2 years ago. We convened for the first time. We organized into subgroups by topic areas, and these subgroups would be responsible for drafting an update of a particular section of the comprehensive plan. A member of the planning board serves as a liaison to each group, and they have been active in this process. There was a survey and a visioning session that engaged the community, and it was just one part of a fairly robust public engagement process. Through the summer of 2019, the committee subgroups wrote the first drafts of the 9 elements of the plan. In the fall of 2019, each draft element was presented to the planning board and received comments from the board and from the public who attended those meetings. February 2020, we held an open house for the public to comment on the revised and updated drafts. And then at our last meeting in March of this year, the committee reviewed input from the open houses and agreed that a core group, including myself, Abby, Steve, and Tom, would go through each of the sections and edit them and revise them for consistency of format and language, internal consistency among the recommendations, and ensure that the comments received from through the public engagement process were reflected in the plan. And we also created an introduction to the plan, which hadn't been assigned to anybody at that point. We were to meet again in April to move the plan forward. That never happened, of course, and we all know why. So the process went on longer. But Abby recently got us the refined drafts back to each of the subcommittees and the planning board liaisons, and many of those committees made a few further edits, which we'll talk about tonight. So what we're going to ask the committees, the subgroups to do tonight is to just comment in any way on their section of the plan that they wish to do. For example, if there was some significant change that you're proposing to make, particularly in this last round, you might mention that so that everybody else on the committee will be aware of that. And we can certainly, as a committee, offer any revisions or changes tonight that we wish to do, and those will be incorporated into the draft. And then we'll see where we are at the end of the night to see what we're going to do. But our hoped for action is that we will get to some sort of point tonight where we can agree to forward this plan on to the selectmen for their review, or to the select board, excuse me, and then to the planning board for them to to begin their review and ultimately adoption of the plan. So remember, our role in all of this was to draft this plan and present it to the planning board because they have the statutory authority to adopt a master plan for the community. So that's what we're doing. We're presenting them ultimately with a plan that we're suggesting has gone through an appropriate process and appropriate vetting and is being put in their hands for consideration for adoption. And we'll talk about that a little bit further. Abby, at this point, there was some letters of support that you received. We have been, as you all know by now, the plan touches on the responsibilities of a lot of different boards and committees within the town, and we've been working with those boards and committees as appropriate for the topic area. And as part of that, once they were happy with what was in the plan as it related to them, we asked them for a letter of support. So Abby, do you want to let us know where we are at that?
Sure. We only have one so far. We have one from the Library Board of Trustees, but the Council on Aging, the Senior Center Director, she let me know that she'll have one to us early next week. And then there's other commissions, the Recreation Commission, the Disability Commission, the Housing Partnership are meeting soon. They're all trying to meet in October before the end of the month, where they'll have this on the agenda, a letter of support. They've reviewed drafts kind of throughout this process since the spring. And then also the Pedestrian Bike Safety Committee. So I'm expecting at least letters from those groups before the end of October.
Abby,
and they've seen drafts already.
so Abby, didn't we agree on the ped bike safety committee to do that?
You didn't actually review it, so I thought for your next meeting I would get the letter to you or have you actually vote to send the letter. I think you talked about it at your last meeting, but you didn't actually.
We didn't actually vote? Oh, you should have said something.
Yep, I forgot.
Because y'all the ones that's going to write the letter, so.
I'll write it and get it back to you.
Come on, that's a secret. That's inside talk.
Is WEAC supposed to weigh in on that too, or?
I was going to ask you I think you had a meeting today.
I'm not on WEAC anymore.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
I can certainly, talk to them about it.
So WEAC is meeting right now. They have their own meeting.
Yeah.
I think it's a start at 7 or 7:30, but
I think it's usually 7:30.
Okay.
I'll send a text to one of the members right now.
Yeah.
See if they're interested in weighing in on it.
Thank you, Pam.
Yeah, so I thought WEAC, and I don't know if the Historical Commission is meeting anytime soon, if they want to review it or weigh in, or if anyone else has any suggestions. I know John, Conservation Commission, I know you just met last week. The Conservation Commission hasn't reviewed this too much, but a lot of what they reviewed a year ago is in the open space and recreation plan section. So if anyone thinks of any other groups that we want to get this to, we could reach out to them. But I think most of the groups, certain staff departments, we had reviewed with them in the winter and spring.
Anybody think of any other boards or committees we might want to ask for support? We did this the last time in 2000, and it's a useful thing to do. It helps the select board and the planning board know that these other boards and committees who are generally named somewhere in the plan are aware of it and support what's in there as it regards to their authorities.
How about Department of Community and Economic Development?
As a state?
The Westwood, that.
Oh, can we?
Would you do them, or are they staff and you would not?
We could ask Nora. I mean, I know I had Nora review a couple sections of the plan, like your section, economic development. So I don't remember if we did. Do you know, Jack, if we had done that for the last time?
It's all been rearranged. We didn't have so many departments. It was all
Okay.
one. Oh, there was an Economic Development Advisory Board at the time, and I think that they did send a letter, but we don't really have that any longer.
Yeah, I did, and we did check with staff, like I reached out to Public Works and Tom, mostly for Tom's section, we reached out to the department heads themselves and have them look it over. So they kind of gave their okay, mostly on the economic development, the housing agent reviewed the housing section, and then we had the various department heads mostly reviewed the community facilities section, like fire chief reviewed that and gave their okay. Not a formal letter, but they just reviewed it and let us know any comments.
And Abby, you were breaking up when you're talking about, I think you said the Conservation Commission you've been talking to Karen, and we should get a version to the overall commission.
Would you like to send this to the Conservation Commission to review?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know that we'll get any comments, but from people, but yeah, if you could ask Karen to put that around, that would be great.
Okay.
Good. Excellent. All right. I'd say at this point, we start trying to go through this plan, and I would suggest, and we'll go in the order that Abby has on the agenda for us. And so, Abby, really the first section is the introduction and piece on public participation. You wrote that, so do you want to talk about that?
Right. So I pretty much uploaded all the files in the same order that they were in the previous plan. So in the beginning, we had an introduction of when this committee was created, what you did. I tried to keep it brief, but I know I wanted to summarize the public participation part, and then we had an appendix in the back that had more details of exactly what you did over the 2 years. And then we had I kind of put together a little vision summary. If anyone had a chance to review that, that was probably where you might want to weigh in. I tried to pull out the key points, just in a couple sentences that I think the major themes that came through in the plan, which I think were about creating, a vibrant, equitable, welcoming community with, social interactions, living and working opportunities for everyone that fosters a sense of community. We heard a lot about high quality public service, abundant natural resources, open space, scenic and historic preservation, thriving business districts, progressive actions for renewable energy to combat climate change, and proactive in attracting businesses in the community.
Sounds good.
And then attractive streetscapes, gateways on pedestrian-oriented, bicycle-friendly, tree-lined streets. So it's kind of free-flowing, but I tried to capture the kind of keywords that we really heard throughout the process. I don't know if everyone had a chance to review that.
Read it.
Okay.
And it did just what you said it did.
Okay.
Captured everything.
Okay.
And then she spent some time in that public participation process because it was a pretty good process, interrupted a little bit by COVID, but people in the community are interested in knowing how much was done, that we did a legitimate outreach process. So we captured that in detail.
Just one comment. I don't think that it was, I know you can't include everything, but there wasn't any reference to like housing and that kind of thing that you gave us, right?
Let me see.
Just something that, something about housing needs, looked at housing needs. I don't know.
It does say living and working opportunities for everyone. I would assume that touches a
could include it.
Okay.
Okay.
Inclusive housing or something like that would probably be useful.
Okay.
Since we spent so much time talking about that. All right, we good with that? With those revisions, obviously. All right, the first section is land use, which Linda and I and Chris Paff worked on. And Linda, you feel free to chip in here. I picked out a couple of things that revisions that were made since the committee last saw it, and one had to do with there were a couple of comments on the way we were talking about open space. In the background section, it kind of made it sound like our open space was under threat or under siege from the outside world, and that really, I think, is a carryover from where we were in 2000, which I think was probably the case. Not so much today. The town's done a good job in protecting open space, and so we just modified that language a little bit, so it didn't have that tone to it.
Could I beg to differ, Jack? Because yeah,
Oh, go
John
ahead,
Rogers.
John. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I would agree with your statement that we've done a lot. In fact, I don't know that the town has really done much, if anything, in regards to protecting the conservation land it has. Not sure if folks are aware, we had a couple of incidents in some conservation land where a property owner felt he could drive ATVs across that land and ostensibly to clean up trash left from previous residents. But in any case, and frankly, the condition of open water bodies in town is in really tough shape. You know, far worse than it was 20 years ago, certainly, due to accelerated eutrophication, conversion to. So I would like to think what you say is true, but I don't know that I see evidence that we've really seen any progress.
And maybe I used the wrong word there. I don't think it was the piece wasn't talking about open space. It was talking about undeveloped land. And what was happening back in 2000 is that there was more undeveloped land than there is today, and there was a lot of development interest in the town. And and so we were talking about it in terms of the need to lock up some of that land to protect it from development. And I don't think we're in the same place we were 20 years ago. So it's not so much a comment on open space as you're talking about it, John. It's talk about undeveloped land. And it still says it. It still says that, you know, that anything that is privately owned undeveloped is developable. So that's really what it says today. It just doesn't make it sound like we're under siege.
Okay.
So Jen, can I jump in real quick on that? Because I think
Sure.
it's a good segue to what I'm kind of still struggling with is the describing, you know, what is open space protected and what is open space and subject to being developed. So I don't think the plan is doing a great job kind of breaking that out. You know, we're high on the land that is developed and low on what is available to develop. So I think that some of the things that we're mentioning in the plan that we want to do kind of contradict one another. You know, where we want to keep our tax base higher on residential, but we're not really spelling out, you know, exactly where that is, where that could be. I think the plan could just do a little bit of a better job breaking out, you know, the protected open space versus the open space that can be developed versus the open space that is conservation land. So I just think we have a lot of things we're trying to achieve with not enough land or the type of land we need to achieve it.
Yeah, that's fair.
If that
So
makes sense.
This is all covered in the open space and recreation section. So
Okay, well,
read that and see if you feel it's not covered enough there, because we specifically go over in detail in that section what is protected and what isn't protected, and I made it extra, you know, clear that we have a lot of land that people don't realize is unprotected. And so why don't you read that section
and it may be there, Steve. I just worry that if people don't read that section, they just read this section, there's going to be some confusion or anxiety or angst over, like, you know, there's too much of this wanting to be done and we don't have enough of that to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I worry. I didn't read the entire every section front to back, I'll be honest, but you know, I just in reading that, if I just always try to put myself in the shoes of a resident and take from their standpoint as far as what they may be looking for the town to do and some of the things we heard in those visioning sessions that want to be done. And, you know, really what we're throwing them all in there, which is great. You know, we heard it, we listened, we put it in there, but do we really have a plan to address those in realistically? And that's where I think open space, what we have available in our inventory for open space, could kind of break that down, even in this section of the plan, even if it's just, you know, instead of having a percentage for open space, what is that percentage? Let's break that out a little bit more.
Okay, so
Being
Jack,
protected and unprotected.
Protected, unprotected, yeah.
Jack, I think the confusion here is, so this is a section mandated by the state that we put in comprehensive plans, and they're talking about land use in the sense of zoning and development, not how we use the land or how well we use the land. And so that's a difference. So I can see where you can get confused on this. So Jack, maybe we should put in at the beginning of this section an explanation of you know, this is really about formal land use in the zoning sense, and you know, and how we're protecting our land is covered in the open space section.
Okay,
You
well,
see why
we'll
they-
take a look at it and see if
Yeah,
we
you,
can't make
you-
some
yeah, you
adjustment.
see why they're confused?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe something like that.
Yeah. So if you look in those other sections, you find those things are covered. But if you see the words land use and you look there and you think, okay, it's actually the wrong place. So somehow we got to steer people to the other section.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at the land use section again. Linda.
I just think there's a lot of things we want to do, but not enough of land to do it. And we want to keep the wood in Westwood as we hear, you know, so I just think it's a balancing act and being realistic about what we as a town really can do, what people want to be done, and how much land we have to accomplish that, and what do we want to keep protected and not protected, where do we want to develop and not develop. So, and I know a lot of that goes through the planning board and all that, but just an observation, like I said, from somebody who tries to look at it as a lay person from the outside, it just doesn't, it comes across as being way more that we can accomplish for the amount of land we have available, whether it be protected or unprotected, and just spelling that out, how much is protected and how much isn't protected might be helpful.
Okay.
And pointing us to those other sections.
That might be the easiest way, is to sort of put a reference into where that exists. Okay. The second thing was that there was a recommendation in this section, as well as several other sections, about an eventual planning board design review process. And I think we had some language in there that was a recommendation to develop such language and such process. And we're proposing to change that to formalize and strengthen the planning board's design review process for promoting desirable design traits, and so forth and so on. In other words, and this same recommendation, or one very similar to it, appears in the economic development section, the town center section, and the natural resources and cultural section. And so that really the change that we're talking about is changing it from actually doing it to suggesting that we should move in that direction, if that's what the planning board wants to do. So it's less directive about this and more of a acknowledging the benefits of it, but you know, we should look at it.
Yeah, Peter and I worked on this the few nights ago, and so we're just saying formalize the planning board's design review process by establishing these standards. So we're going to make them all say that, and I think we agree that would be the best way to do it.
So sorry. So I just want to be clear. So right now, the planning board does not have strong wording, a directive to create standards for aesthetics, correct?
All right, so
right, a design review process.
So what we have is we have, when the planning board has a design review process, it's up to members of the planning board to say, hey, you know, we like the buildings to look like this and look like this. They've never formalized
right.
it.
So hold on, so Steve.
Yeah.
My question is, this revision creates that formalization or takes away strong wording to create it?
The
No,
second.
no,
The second. We
No,
at one point this read create design review guidelines, and now it says less.
Yeah, these are suggestions, right? This whole document is suggestions.
Suggestions, right?
yeah. So we sort of know what they are in our heads. We haven't put them down on paper. When we did Westwood Station originally, we had an architect in, and he came up with a very formal packet. It was really good of the exact standards for Westwood Station. When we switched to University Station, everyone had seen those, so they kind of used them. It wasn't as formal as the first was, and it's the same kind of thing. We know what they are. They're not written down, and the reason it's a good thing is we want to let businesses know in advance what to expect. So if we have some standards written down that they can read beforehand, then they can come in with things done the way they should be, rather than have them come up with something and then we say, oh no, we really like, if they come in with a yellow brick building, we say no, we want red brick building. So if we had those standards where that was established in advance, then it would be better for the town and it'd be easier on the
developers as well.
I'd like to hear from Peter Neville, because this came up in the economic development section, and we were going to have you talk about it there as well. But how would you like to see it handled?
Yeah, I think, Stephen and I talked about it, and seemed like this was the right approach. We want to encourage them to do it. It sounds like the planning board has talked about it for a long time. So they should get some standards up front so that developers are not coming in and spending money on design and then the planning board gives them some expectations. It should be up front. And I will say there's another point that we put in the economic development one, and that was to, at the same time, to go out and review best practices for balancing vibrant economic development with design, use, scope, and size of the project. So,
good point.
One question is, do we want to be Nantucket and say everything has to be gray shingle, and it can only look like this, or do we want to be somewhere balanced in the middle? So, best thing to do would be to look at some other towns and see what they're doing and finding successful.
So we thought that was a reasonable approach, and that's basically what we're adopting as language in all of the sections. Yep. Okay. Linda, unless you had something else on land use, that's all I was going to talk about. Or not. Okay. I had town centers next. Kate and John. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about?
No, I don't know that there's anything special to highlight there. I sent Abby a few little, words here and there, a couple of sort of long paragraphs I thought could be chopped up into smaller ones, but not much more than that. I don't know that there really is anything that jumps out at me.
Okay. Kate, same.
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Okay, excellent. All right. Economic development, Peter?
Sure. So I think the one note I will add just after town centers is I think we incorporated some of the importance of maintaining the village center, the Westwood community feel into the economic development. So I think we made sure that's one thing. If you look back versus 20 years ago, a little bit more emphasis on that, which seemed to come out of what our residents want. The one note that Abby put in the list was we were careful about how we described housing diversity and transit-oriented housing. Made sure to use the word increase and opportunities as opposed to just a strict do it. Because there are a number of places where diversity of housing might not fit within the community that is in one of our 5 economic development areas. Some places apartments might be appropriate, some places multi-use on a second floor might be appropriate. Other places, it might be more single family. So we wanted to increase the opportunity, but be careful to not say it's a, you have to do it. So that was the one thing we spent a little bit of extra time on and getting that language set.
Any thoughts, any further thoughts on that? Is that it then, Peter?
Yes, that's it.
Thank you. Those are good comments. Next, housing, Barbara and Sheila.
Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with what we came up with and what the final product looks like. I was a little bit concerned that, I wanted to make sure it reflected what the surveys, what we heard at the forums, the need for diverse kind of housing. It's there. It's laid out maybe a little bit different from the way I would like to see it, but I think we captured the information that we garnered through this process. Yep.
Excellent.
I'm good.
Anybody have any thoughts off the top of your head about that? Okay. Yeah, I thought housing section was quite good. Community facilities, Tom?
Not many comments on the community facilities. I think everything there represents the work that we did with the different departments, whether it was school department or the fire department. And so their concerns are all well represented. Personally, I'm pleased that the town hall facility is ranked pretty high for some changes there, especially as it pertains to universal access. And I know that was something the planning board focused on when I made my presentation to them in whatever year that was. I totally forget. So if there are any questions, but I think it's basically what we've seen all along.
Okay. Was there any need or value to attempting to update the school situation? As you mentioned, the many months have come and gone since we talked about that. I mean, I don't think a final decision has been made, so maybe it's premature, but.
Well, it is kind of a changing scenario there, and they're moving closer and closer to a decision. So I wouldn't be surprised when the plan is finally approved that we're a little bit behind, but I don't know if Abby has any feelings about that, because she's been in contact with them more recently than I have.
We did, within the last week or so, I think we just updated the background info to bring it up to current, that the school department or the elementary building committee forwarded their design for selected the Hanlon site to be combined with the Deerfield school at the Hanlon site location. And I just kind of updated with their information where they were in the process. So I think their goals are we're still the same to complete that process. We just updated the background info kind of to bring it up to where they were today.
Didn't they have a meeting last night, the school committee? I didn't attend.
Right. That's why I think Charlie was busy the last couple nights at the school committee meetings.
Okay. That's all then, Tom.
Thank you.
Good. Open space and recreation. Worked on that.
Hey, everyone.
Charlie, Paula.
So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm at work tonight. So I had to do double duty. I'm really happy with it. I think there were really only two, updates since we last formulated the draft. One of those is in the actions forms in the action section under open space number 4. We just identified the space around Lyman's Pond in Rice Reservation behind the school as a potential opportunity to have some walking trails, maybe some fishing or skating, and just to include that maybe in as an additional open space. That wasn't in our original draft. We added that in maybe 6 months ago or so, just as a potential.
Mhm.
And then I think the only other slight change was that the fields that were available at Westwood Lodge, since that development, that they are still securing that field space for the town use. Other than that, I think it summarizes the very large document that was accepted in 2019. So I think we're good. And Linda, if you want me to address maybe some other issues and you think so, there's a better way to explain the property and the land that's unprotected versus protected, and what could be available for recreational use versus what would be insured as not just open space but wooded or trails or that kind of thing. I'm happy to meet, and I don't know if we would ever do an addendum at any time, but I'd be happy to talk about it.
Okay. Thank you, Paula. No questions there. Steve, on transportation?
The
Tell me-
transportation's been, that was the first one that was really clean and ready to go. So hasn't been, the only recent changes, we added Hartford Street to in the background information to the list of streets where there's a lot of traffic, commuting traffic in the morning and evening, because the residents are concerned about that on that road. And so we figured we'd respond to it, and just those two words have been added. That's about the only change we've had in quite a while, because
Good.
again, it was worked on quite a while ago with the Ped and Bike Safety Committee.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Steve. And Peter and Pam on sustainability and resiliency.
So I thought the latest revision looked great. I did ask Abby to sort of change one of the lines where she talked about meaningful reductions in CO2 to something a little stronger. I feel that it needs to be really stressed that we only have 7 or 8 years to transition from fossil fuels if we want to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. So I don't think that's really reflected with enough urgency in this report. It is, the words are there, but it doesn't stand out in, bigger font and bold. It's really, there's this huge disconnect, I think, between what people perceive and what scientists are saying. And that urgency isn't really reflected strongly enough in this section.
Yeah, it might make the chapter a little bit less readable, but yeah, all caps, I think, would be a first thing.
You got a fan, Peter.
No, I absolutely agree with what Peter's
one,
saying.
we talked about this a little bit last time we spoke, is that right now it seems like 1 or 2 people on the school committee are enough to prevent a canopy system from being installed in the parking lot of the high school. And I think that's wrong. I don't think those people should have the power to do that. And as part of a long-range plan, I think we need some sort of way of siting solar farms. We have to put up
we do.
solar panels, and they got to go somewhere. And be just a couple people on the school committee deciding that. So I don't know if that fits in with this long-range plan, but the whole Shuttleworth thing, I don't know, it's just really a disaster. I think it was a shame. Where I think if a lot of people have a valid point saying, why are we doing this in the woods if we could put it over a parking lot? So I don't know if we can fit that into the plan somehow or somewhere, but I think that's important.
Could we add some language that maybe we want to word it slightly, cloak it a little bit in polite terms, but basically say, the future is now, or the hope for a future is now, and we would hope that this plan would set the stage for implementing any number of sustainability and resilient actions, specifically including a choice such as, and might even talk about, canopies over parking areas as opposed to in forested areas, but also, a fair trade-off is solar in forested areas in the right locations.
So we've been working very hard on this whole section, and we've been adding more and more strong words. Dave Atkins wrote up some nice stuff. We put it right at the beginning in his own little section there, where he talks about, he said, the greatest challenge facing not only Westwood but our entire planet in 2020 is whether or not we, and so forth. It's I don't know how we could, and we'll look at it more, and we are putting more stronger and stronger language in there, and trying to get people to, and in fact, I chopped down the goals and objectives there to really, to just jump out and say, prioritize and invest in clean, renewable energy to drastically reduce reliance on fossil fuels. Things that, we're looking at, we're trying to say it as strong as we can of what needs to be done. And we're still working on it. We're still trying to get the wording as best we can. But yeah, this is what it's all about.
Peter, what struck me in that whole process recently was that there's this desire to do this, and there's a person that's working on this and knows a lot about it and is putting forward projects, but there's no advocacy for it bigger than that. In other words, if there's an opportunity, they push it. If they either get it or don't get it, but it's a bigger question. It's almost like integrating this notion into everything that we do, and it's almost a process problem, because the school committee is hearing something on their property and they like it or don't like it, and then they make a call, but there's no opportunity for other people to say anything one way or the other. I mean, there was a lot of problems with that recent process, but one is that there's nothing that captures this. It's too fragmented.
I agree. That's good.
And you've got to, I think it sounds terrible to say, but I think one of the best things that we can do is to do that climate change plan that's proposed in this section. Nobody likes to hear that because that's another planning process. It'll take some time, but it's where you can begin to gather the data that you need, gather build the advocacy and do something.
Can I
focused?
just
of course,
interject
Kate.
something
Yep.
as well? So a couple of things. One is we did hear about this a lot from people, right? So it's not just the people speaking tonight who think this is important. This is what we heard in the visioning. This is what we are hearing anecdotally as we are out talking with people about this process. So to Peter's point, in town centers, we want to, the sentence that reads, we want to have seating wherever we can, is written with the same exact font as cut carbon emissions. And those are two right? So, so I just wanted to remind everybody, like, this is just a whole list of recommendations, an unprioritized list that we're giving to the planning board, right? That's a tool that they can use to make their decisions. What I think might be new and might be something for this group to consider is telling the planning board, share it with the school board. Like, I don't know that that's been done before, but you know, we want you to share this section with every land use section, every conservation section. We want you to share this section with the school board, and
Well-
which would be new.
There, just to make a point to support that, in our housing section, we had something about all town boards should work together. There was a language there that would suggest this is not isolated, different committee reports. This has to, it's a plan, but everything has to be tied together. So in support of what you're saying, I think that's key. I'm looking back on Steve's, his section, and it's this complete street maps project that's supposed to look at sidewalks. For all of us who've been walking on streets more during this pandemic, we see the need for where there are scary places along Pond Street, or we can name the streets where, because of sidewalks, inattention to that over time, that there's not this plan that continues to revisit and puts monies towards that, that it's all falling apart, which makes it much harder for and more expensive for us, I would think, to not done that. So we can put it in our plan, but it has to have some teeth. It has to have some, this isn't suggest, these are things that we have to do as a town to make sure that we are creating something the best we can for West.
So one thought that comes to my mind to do all of what I think I'm just hearing is to go with that strongly worded, this is our sort of, aside from sort of bettering Westwood, in all ways, that it is the plan, right? Inevitably, and to some extent, an overwhelming consistency, priority was this issue. Have that section in the introduction, the overview. I can't remember what the front section is called, and make that if not the lead in, something that stands out prominently, all caps at the end of that section, something that really says, and by the way, don't take for granted the importance of this, that had across the board, support through the process, and is a priority for those involved in creating this document and providing input to it.
I think that's good. Abby, that can be done, right?
Right. Yeah. We could make that stronger in that kind of vision summary too at the beginning.
Right. There you go. Exactly.
And then I like Sheila's recommendation about putting something in there about it's the responsibility of all of the departments and boards and stuff to do that. And I do think, going back to the climate plan that Peter is proposing, is that just like complete streets, or just like open space, or just like housing that have their own plans because of their relative importance, climate will have its own plan, and that will give maybe some of the emphasis that we're looking for.
Right, and it crosses or is affected by every single one of these other things that we're talking about.
Yep.
There almost needs to be like a climate czar.
Yes.
Enough power to say yes or no to budget requests and plans, and everything we do should be screened and analyzed in terms of climate change. Is this going to increase our emissions of greenhouse gases? If it is, forget it.
Right. Yep.
We could use one of those czars at the federal level.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Let's not.
Work down.
I think what most people don't understand in town is that our CO2 emissions are still going up. The new buildings, the fire station, the police station, the library, all of those buildings emit more CO2 than the old buildings. And we're going in the wrong direction.
Yep, yep.
Been trying to get Tom to put out an estimate of our municipal CO2 emissions. It's easy to do if you know what the energy use is and the type of fuel. It's an easy calculation, but he seems reluctant to do that. But that's the kind of data we need to get out there, and needs to control our decisions from now on.
That's a great point.
Is that one of our action items on there? That should be like to actually.
Yeah, CO2 inventory is.
Yeah, CO2 inventory that's done now and continued over time.
Peter Neville, were you going to say something?
Yeah, Peter Kane, I'm just, I read yours real quick and I apologize for not diving into it deeper, but you bring up a good point about Azar. In my experience, if I want to get something done in a, like this, I run a manufacturer, and the rule of thumb is if you measure it, you can fix it.
Yes.
And it seems to me like we need to measure this and report it. Because if you measure it and report it, everybody sees it and says, oh, we need to fix that.
Yeah.
And or have we gone far enough to say, we want this measured, we want these projects tracked and done, and we want a report to come out to the residents of the town every year. And if somebody doesn't want to do something, it's going to be public. And if it's as silly as a couple people don't want a couple solar panels over a parking lot, they got to deal with the public going, no, we do want it.
That's a great point.
Is there a way to put in this that, maybe now, now is the time, like you said, is do we want a way to track this, track the projects that we want done, and then report it out formally so that everybody gets to see it. And it sets an expectation of urgency, and nobody wants to be the guy that doesn't, that has the bad results.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yes.
So Peter, that is, as Steve pointed out, that's a recommendation. It's a part of the climate action plan. But maybe we pull that out and say,
this is what it should all be.
The town
toward.
should be doing this now.
Yeah.
And then Abby, it ends up in the implementation matrix, and then which we'll come to in a moment. And then that's supposed to be on an annual basis gone through and saying, okay, what did we do? What did we say we're going to do? What did we do? And what didn't we do? And why didn't we do it? And that's the idea there.
Yeah, I tried to sum it up in the goals by saying the first goal is to get plans on what the problem is and what we need to do. Second is educate people about it. And the third thing to do is do it, to carry out those what needs to be done. And so
Maybe you reverse 2 and 3, Steve. Do it, and then tell people what you did.
This is the problem: is nothing in the town will happen unless people vote to make it happen and appropriate the money to make it happen. So we have to educate the people of the necessity of it, or that won't happen.
My only comment
and
would
you're going to be, and Kate, you're going to be going on the FinCom. You've got to be sitting there telling them that all the time. The way Peter did when he was on FinCom, saying, hey, aren't you looking at the energy here and the CO2 emissions? You've got to be doing that every single thing that they it's appropriate.
I think we should set an expectation that it gets done this year.
Okay. Short term.
Now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that's the consensus of the group, right?
Absolutely.
And Peter, it's doable, right? I mean, you can do it. It's not that it can't be done. You just have to do it.
It's easy.
Okay.
And
I like it.
Realistically, Peter, half the projects we're going to get are probably self-funding.
True. Yep, or free.
Right. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. We should be doing it now.
I agree. It makes sense financially as well as environmentally.
Excellent. Okay, so we have some things we'll do on that section. Abby, do you want to talk about the implementation matrix just for a moment?
Sure. So I sent out, it was kind of last night, so I know it wasn't too long, but I had, after we had every section, the implementation matrix basically writes out every single implementing action for every section of the plan, with just a little summary. And then I didn't really, how I was thinking about it, I didn't prioritize because I didn't want to say anything's more important than the other. So I went with short term. So things that should be done, within the next 2 years. So pretty soon. And then midterm or medium length time, within 3 to 5 years. And then a column for long term for things that would take over 5 years. And so the things that are mostly in short term doesn't necessarily mean they're all the most important, but some of them are there because they are, high priority, but some things can be done pretty quickly or don't need a lot of resources that we could do. So most things are in the short term or medium length column. I didn't have too many in the long term. The ones that were in the long term are things that would take substantial amount of funds, significant collaboration with various groups, such as I think I put like the, senior center expansion or fire station 1 expansion. So those things that I think would just going to take a number of years in funding to get moving. So most things are in the short term or the medium term.
So Abby, so do we want to add some columns to this? Do we want to add a priority column? Is this high priority, medium priority, low priority? And also in addition to short-term, long-term, and short-term, medium-term, long-term, there's also just continuous things that we want to be doing all the time. So do we want to add those 2 columns? Yeah, anyone can answer
That's
this
for
question.
everyone. Yep, that's for everyone. Yeah.
I'm sorry,
what
can
does
you
everyone
repeat
think?
that, Steve? I was reading.
So
Go ahead.
so she has each thing, and she has, is this a short-term priority, a medium-term priority, or a long-term? In other words, how long it's going to take for this to happen. But some of them are continuous things where we want to be doing them now and we want to be doing them every year. So we might want to have a column that just says it's a continuous thing. And then do we want to have a priority column, no matter what it is this the highest priority? Is this a medium or a low priority? Or for maybe for this climate change stuff, we want to create a super high priority?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be an effort. I mean, I don't know how many recommendations we have, but there's a lot.
There's a lot, yeah.
To prioritize everything. Could we get away with high priorities?
Yeah, so maybe we could just have a column that just says high priority and check that column where those are high priorities and leave everything else.
And we'll all have to agree to that, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other distinction,
much easier way to do it.
Yeah. Another distinction I would make is that the short term and the midterm and the long term are also about sort of building blocks. There's some things you really can't do until you've done something before. To me, the conservation land management plan is one of those that's mentioned in various ways in various sections, and you really need that because it supports things like the CPA, it supports other activities. So really, to me, that's a fundamental, got to get that started early. I would also make the distinction that, to your point, Steve, that there's some things that are continuous. I think what we're talking about is when you start these in the short, medium, or long term. And your point is a real good one. That they will continue on. I think that gets another level of complexity that we want to try and try and boil down rather than add more.
Yeah, continuous. It means we should be doing it right now, so we should start doing it and continue to do it.
So I think that's reflective in the highest priority or something, whatever the right words are. For those that we feel fundamentally really are important. Clearly, the climate change affecting items is at the top of our list, and then there's some others.
Sheila.
like looking at sidewalk improvements, that's ongoing, right? There is
Yeah.
something here that's not a short term, it's a continuous looking at taking care of, situation for some of these items.
And I think the affordable housing is a continuous kind of thing
Yeah,
too,
there you
not
go.
short or long. So
Exactly.
yeah, so I could imagine that column would have some value. All right, any other thoughts on that?
It almost sounds like that column is areas that we're not doing well enough today. Right? I mean, we really have.
Very true.
Right? I mean, we
Yeah.
have a lot of priorities, and I just, as we go through it, if we find that everything needs to be a top priority, it might be, the alternative would be columns where we are not putting enough effort in today,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And that might be a shorter, more specific list and doesn't require us to prioritize, 120 activities.
Kind of like a report card.
Yeah, it's I mean, anything that's, I think in theory, we're telling people to do all of these at different time frames, but it sounds like there's 4 or 5 areas that we might all have an opinion about that Westwood has not put enough focus and emphasis. I would tell you that the one of my pet peeves is a sidewalk connecting Islington to High Street.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're just not putting enough emphasis. The energy efficiency, we're not putting enough emphasis. We're sort of sidelining it, not focused on it hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
So just a thought.
Yeah, no,
So-
you're right. Somebody was saying something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say, so
Okay.
what I'm feeling like, if we're going to highlight a couple of things, like John was saying with the CPA, I feel like if we somehow highlight the CPA as an area where we are behind, we don't have to highlight the underlying pieces, because then we're kind of marking everything as being behind. We'll let the project manager understand the things that they have to do and say, look, you're behind on CPA, do everything you need to catch up. So that's one thought, is if they build on each other, just highlight the highest thing as the critical thing. But then the other one, a little bit more technical about the way this is set up, is Abby, when we're out of draft status, if you could repeat that top line across each page that tells us what the columns, the header, and what section you're currently in, as that it's housing continued, would just be great, because I was like scrolling up to the top, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for everything you've done on this. It's been great.
Yeah, so maybe
She has
the
done
priority column can just have a few things in it that we can define and like, this is a high priority that has to be done now. This is a high priority that should be done in the time frame indicated. Really, and then just leave most of them would be blank, and really just pointing out the ones that are really the highest priority and the things that need to be done that we think could be done now.
Mhm. Okay. So I think I would propose that go. I like the idea that those 2 columns being added, Abby. And maybe I think the way to do this would be, and this is almost a separate exercise in a way, but Abby, if you would want to take a shot at filling that in and then get it around to everybody, and they could look at it and give you their opinion of that. And that's the only way we're going to do it. And remember, this goes to the planning board. So what we're indicating to them is that based on all we heard and know from the last 2 years, this is what we're suggesting is the priorities and what the long and short and medium term stuff is. But they'll get it, and they'll be able to do a similar exercise if they choose to. They may just accept what we gave them, but it is theirs. Any other thoughts on any of this before we go on to next steps here? I think this has been terrific. People have done such a good job on this throughout that it made tonight's review a little bit easier. What we would like to do, and Abby, you're going to have to help me with this, is we would very much like to begin scheduling this plan to advance to the select board and to the planning board. In the agenda, or some of the material, Abby has submitting it to the select board for a meeting on October 26th, and then the planning board sometime in mid-November, the 17th. What that means, though, is that there are some things that we have to do to the plan, some of the things that we just talked about tonight, and we can do them. I think it was a relatively small list of things. I think we can probably wordsmith them in and to people's satisfaction. And then there's a whole category of things that we really have been doing but need to do more, and that has to do with a little bit more wordsmithing in some places, formatting, some typographical stuff, some spelling, grammar, that kind of thing. We'll continue to work on that, and then it needs to all come together as one document. And it should probably be in that form when the select board gets it, and obviously when the planning board gets it. So the proposal I want to make is that we, this small group that's been doing this for a while, basically Abby, assisted by some else of the others, do this. Take a shot at incorporating the comments that you all made tonight, continuing on with the formatting and editing that we're doing, and then get it back to you sometime in the next week or two. And then you take a look at it and let us know if there's anything in there that you really think needs to be changed before this goes any further. The other way to do it is for us to come back together again as a steering committee and go through this all again. I don't think the stuff we heard tonight adds up to the necessity to do that, but we certainly could do that. So I'd like to hear your opinions on that. On how we do this, how we go forward.
Jack, are you going to want us to be able to take a vote to submit it to the planning board? Is that correct?
I'd like to be able to do that tonight with the conditions so we can word better, but the conditions I just talked about, that we recognize there were some comments made tonight that we want to make, and that there's still some editing that we need to do. And then the whole thing needs to come together as a document. So it's going to look different when you see it again. So if you could live with that, if you think that that's all acceptable and is not going to be an issue for you, then we could make the motion to agree to forward this to the select board and the planning board for their review. And that's going to yield some comments as well. So we're going to have to do some stuff then. So process is not done yet, but we really would like to advance it. But we don't want to advance something that the committee is not comfortable with or totally supportive of.
And would we, so once we thought it was finalized, we would give you email that we're good to go?
Yep.
So that's part of your proposal too, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Abby will indicate where the changes that you're looking for can be found, and to make it easier for you. And then there'll be some wording and reorganization of some things that are being done, but it's not going to change the substance of anything that we're talking about. It's just format.
All caps for sustainability and resiliency, including in the intro. Yeah.
Well, we know now if we don't do that, we're going to get it back from Peter. So might as well just do
and
it.
Others.
Can I add something as well? I'm just looking at, at the action items, and under land use elements, the L1, first on the agenda is, foster community gathering places, walking paths, bike paths, trails, shuttle services. Those could go under land use. It could go under recreation. It could go under transportation. I don't think it belongs strictly as a land use issue. I don't really see those necessarily, other than community gathering space, maybe land use, but walking paths, bike paths as well. But in today's, we don't even use those terms anymore. I work in transportation, and that's something I do every day. You would refer to those as alternative modes of transportation, or we don't. They're shared use paths. They're not really bike paths or walking paths. They're we try to kind of put them together into one. So I just think that that's an area where I know it's very dear to Steve, and I know where he's coming from, but I think we need to give it a little bit more thought about where those go and how they're appropriately placed.
Sorry, Linda, what section are you looking at?
So I'm just kind of looking at the matrix, just even the L1, the very first one under land use. And, you know, we have land use, we have recreation, we have open space, and we have transportation. And, you know, those all shouldn't all be lumped under one section. They should be really thought out because, you know, a walking path or a bike path is technically considered a transportation corridor as well, depending on where you put it. If you put it in the middle of the woods, it's for recreation. If you put it alongside a roadway or even on a roadway, or, you know, from you know, High Street to Islington, that's a transportation corridor. So, you know, just something to think about. I don't want it to look like it's strictly recreational, because it's not. It should fall into the, you know, and then you do have shuttle services. That's transportation. So there's just some things I just think should be better organized as far as where they go, so that people understand that they're not kind of one size fits all.
So we've been talking about this from the very beginning.
Right.
You know, do we put one thing just in one place? Because a lot of times things apply in several places. So we have that in a lot of places. So we have trails and walking paths we have it in town centers, we have it in transportation, certainly we have it in land use, even in economic
And open space.
development and open space, we have it. So we have it in all those places. And what we have to do is look at it in each place, make sure we're using the same terminology, that we're being consistent. And typically we've been using simple terms that people know. We have nothing. Someone just brought up the, you know, microtransit term, and immediately we got someone came back and said, I never heard of that. I had to look it up. So we've been avoiding getting, even though they're becoming into use, you know, like saying a shared path. We pretty much kept saying walking paths, bike paths, even though we know it's a shared use path.
Yeah,
So
and
not to get too technical.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Linda, I loved your comment earlier about looking at this without our expertise, right?
Right.
So you have expertise of what those things are really actually supposed to be called.
Yeah.
I don't. So I need and I'm not trying to be offensive to anybody else. I need the dumbest down version for me of what we're actually talking about. And I do need it listed in each section where it might go, because my head doesn't naturally expand to think of walking paths in all these different areas. So I love your point about looking at it as kind of a new person to this document who, and for me, I might not look in all the sections to see all the hits that I need. So that was my support of the way that that's listed now. And this is my last time meeting with you guys, so I need to say everything that I could possibly want to say. So we're just trying to get it out.
We do put in references when in the background material when we talk about walking paths and things like that. We say, you know, see also in this section and in this section when we talk about those things. So we do make those references. If you really want to look through and just look at the whole thing and you see where we need more references, that's fine. Let us know, and we'll put in more. The implementing actions, we want to keep them straightforward. So even though it appears in several places, we don't always, and usually we don't say it's the same as the other one, but we always thought, what should we do about it if we, you know, like L1 is the same as R4, or it's the same as T18. You know, what do we want to do about that? That's something to think about. We haven't really totally resolved yet.
Well, I think I've seen this in other matrices where they do actually just what you were talking about, Steve. So if you had L1 and it says this, and then there'll be some way of indicating T5, OS3, it just tells you what the other recommendations that are either the same or complementary to that recommendation.
Right.
So that if you were considering working on that, you would probably also want to see these other recommendations because they'd be very similar to that and gives you more, that's the simplest way to do it in the matrix
Yeah.
itself.
So do we want to add another column in the matrix, which is?
Well, you
referencing-
could just put a parentheses
or
after
just
the
put underneath
recommendation
it.
and just
Yeah,
list
underneath it,
those.
just put,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
we
the
need to do that.
nomenclature that we've come to, the T's and the L's and stuff makes that
Yeah.
easy to do. So we could consider that as well.
Mhm.
Can I go back to something? I'm looking at the uses of the CPA funds, and to me, it's like that's not just, it's sort of a limited list in terms of the possibilities of what could be used there. Like it could be possible uses, but I know someone talked about community centers that were funded by CPA money and
Right.
Needham, for example. So rather than restrict it to that, like it can't, that seems like this is the only way it can be used, as opposed to broadening it so that it includes like community resources. It's, if you look at the list, it's kind of, to me, a little limiting. And if we can somehow look at that, broadening it to, community resources or community buildings or something that includes, just to broaden it.
Yeah, I think where we talked about it the most was it the open space where they really went into it. They listed all of the things, and some of the other places we were specific about when we mentioned the CPA about, like an open space, we just had it for open space, for instance. But there was somewhere where they mentioned all of them. But should we be mentioning all of CPA's uses every time we mention CPA?
No, but if you,
It might confuse people a little.
I was
Yeah.
just concerned about being a document that looks like this is the only ways in which CPA money, if it were ever to come to pass, would be used. That was my comment.
It's also for historical and housing. So it would be those three areas: recreation, historical, and housing.
Right. But community centers would go outside that. It wouldn't be, it would be
Right.
not inclusive.
Yeah, I do. I good points. I think it becomes difficult to balance all these out. I think it'd be a little bit difficult to distinguish which other items, which other of the 233. I did the math just as we were talking. There's 233 total of all of these. So it's a big, long list, and they are inevitably going to have lots of overlaps. Some are probably just repetitious, though they may be worded differently. They are effectively the same. So I think I agree with the idea. And if someone had the scope the time to work that through, I think we probably would end up spending a bit of time sort of worrying about how to qualify those for related sections. I'm a little bit worried about that, and again, just another level of complexity, even though that is in fact what this should all be about, is having an integrated whole.
Or if it says possible uses.
Yep. Related section, related goal, or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, we can do that. All right. Any other comments before we get back to the matter at hand? How do you want, and the question is, how do you want to handle this final review? Would you be willing to vote tonight to move it forward with the condition that we will send it back to you for your review prior to it landing in the hands of the select board?
I would like to so move.
I would second that.
All right. Do we need any discussion on it? Anybody feel that there's something that they're not going to support?
This is great.
My only comment, Jack, would be just to cover us as a group, that you get an email back to us that we're comfortable to move forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was at the heart of what Jack was mentioning.
that's-
That was the motion. Yep. Yep. It's a good
It's
point.
understood, but just want to make sure.
Okay. And now,
But,
Abby,
yeah.
is this possible?
Yes. Yeah, we can.
This
you know,
turnaround I'm
right
talking about.
away. making these changes within the next couple of days and get them back to everyone.
Okay.
Terrific. Wow.
All right.
Terrific.
So why don't we, there's a motion and a second, and it's been amended so to include the fact that you'll get them for review, and that we'll be looking for an email back from you saying that you did it and you're good with it. So can we all take a vote here? All in favor of that motions, you can signify by saying aye. Put your hand up. That is
Aye.
even better.
Aye.
I raised the wrong hand.
Okay, that's unanimous then, for the people I can see. A couple of people
That's
I
a
can't see.
voting early and often sort of approach.
All right, so we'll take that
You
as
can vote twice.
a unanimous endorsement of that
Yeah,
motion, and that's what we'll do from this point on. And Abby will, Steve, Tom will work with you to make sure that we can do this in time.
Right. So I'll try to get those. We'll get those back to everyone within the next few days. And then if we can, the next meeting with the select board, or the select board's next meeting is October 26th. Because then they're not meeting again until later in November.
Yes, so we need them first, right? Yep.
Yeah. And then the planning board meeting that I thought we'd aim for would be Tuesday, November 17th.
So if you could get that in your calendars. And Abby explained to me the other day that that would be really useful if we could do that, because the planning board doesn't have a full agenda at this point. So it'd be a good opportunity to get this done. And I know you don't want to spend another year of your lives doing this, so.
So Abby, does that need to be a hearing when the planning board looks at this, or?
Yes.
a
So it
formal
will be.
hearing you want advertise?
Yeah, so it will be a full planning board hearing. So I would advertise that in the newspaper, and I would start publicizing that. We would do, so after we get this document finally updated, after tonight's meeting, we'd post that on the website, and then I would also get that November 17th meeting lined up, and then I would probably also email. We got a lot of emails during the vision session and the survey, so I would do some email blasts for everyone too, letting them know about this plan and where it is, and the meeting on November 17th. So I would, if people can attend the select board meetings and planning board meetings, I'll let you know once those are confirmed. But I would think usually probably Jack would do a presentation summarizing the work and the plan. And then the planning board may ask some questions, may have some comments. They would take public comments, and then when they're ready, they'll vote on it. So I thought November 17th would be good. That way, if they need more time, they have another meeting on December 1st and one scheduled also for December 15th. That way, if they don't finish it in one night, they'd have two more before the end of the year.
So Abby, can I ask, it goes to the Board of Selectmen before the planning board, but it doesn't go back to the Board of Selectmen, the planning board adopts it as the final document?
Yes, the planning board is the approving authority, but if the select board, if they have any changes that they want to make, then, or if they want us to come back, then we would do that too.
And how long is this plan? I know we started a long time ago, so just refresh my memory. How long is this plan supposed to run for, last, like from?
It's usually about 5 to 10 years. Some states require them to be updated every 5 years. Massachusetts doesn't. So usually it's around that 7 to 10 year range for updating it.
Any other questions or comments before we break? All right, well, obviously we are enormously appreciative of your time and efforts on this over the past couple of years, and we'll let you know that again before we're done. And Kate, I understand that you have to step away from this committee with new responsibilities. Congratulations on that. And the rest of you, we'll be talking again.
I just want, I just want to thank Abby for all her hard work
Yeah.
as
Here,
well.
here.
I'd
Here,
say,
here.
woohoo,
Thank
I want to thank all of you.
it's been interesting.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you
you.
so
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Good to
Night.
see you all.
Bye.
Bye
Good
now.
to see you
Bye.
too.
Good night.